Yes.
You're rolling.
All right, I'm over here. Welcome back. It is a beautiful day. We probably could have gone in the beehives, but all my neighbors are having trees cut and stumps ground, and there's a lot of activity which disturbs the bees on the ground out there. So that stump grinding that's going on in the neighbor's yard, and the upset and disturbed. And I've tried to go into my hives before when people were doing like heavy duty construction work like that in their yard, and the bees just they get very angry. So hopefully Friday will be the day that we get to do that. In the meantime, something else came up, so I'm going to demonstrate today how to break down this tenderloin, clean up this tenderloin and get the steaks cut out of it and show you some of the parts. John picked that up at the depot yesterday. I have this piece of puff pastry left over from the one that I was showing you the 7 folds on, so I'm going to show you a real quick French cookie that's called palmiers, which is also elephant ears. You know it as elephant ears. And I just want to mention one thing. I had a friend who is a distributor, and they gave me this hand sanitizer.
Brian Carroll, regular watching customer.
I was going to say his name in case it was an issue. It's not for sale. It's produced by Jack Daniels. No, you cannot drink this, but it is a hand sanitizer that you could put in a mixture and keep in your car or wherever you need to go that you can't wash your hands to be safe. So that's really cool. I'm happy to have that product. I think that's kind of a neat thing that liquor companies have switched over to make.
Look at you got a special guest. Tanya's
Hi. I look like crap. I just woke up, but don't tell anyone except everyone that's watching.
Oh, well, whatever.
Tanya, you have any cooking tips, Tanya? Any cooking tips for the pandemic that you can let our audience know about today?
Yeah, Tanya.
Yeah, let everyone else do the cooking.
You live with a chef. What's he cooking?
Everything.
Yeah, and are you eating everything?
No, I'm done with food now. Except Entenmann's chocolate donuts. I still eat those.
Yum. How's everybody over there? You guys all right?
Yep,
How's
living the dream, the quarantine dream. Just cleaning and stuff.
Tanya's boys
I
are
don't know why
delivering
John
mail.
put me on camera, but I look like crap. But I want to say
Right.
hi.
I'll let you go then.
I want to say hi to you too.
I mean, this takes time, you know? That takes time.
Yeah, I know. You didn't give me time today, John. You know this.
I don't care what I look like
We'll
anymore.
get you another time then.
Call me later when you're done. I want to talk to you.
I will.
Thanks for coming
Bye.
on.
Bye. Okay, so while we were talking, I made a rectangle, and I guess I'm going to cut it off a little bit more squared off, just so that it comes out better. So this was the puff pastry that we made, the rough puff, the quick puff pastry, because as I told you, making puff pastry the real classic way is a production. So this is some cinnamon sugar that I have, and I'm going to liberally dust this over this puff pastry and kind of roll it back into the dough. I'm going to make mine cinnamon sugar. I think that the classic ones are just that real heavy duty 10x sugar. So the next thing you do is you fold half to the middle and half to the middle, and then you dust it again. Well, I dust it again and roll that in, and then you fold it in half again. So you can see we made this little swirly thing there. And then the next thing you do is you cut them to little pieces. Oh, I didn't turn my oven on. All right, well, this is going to be an after show. We're going to have to show you guys what these look like tomorrow or next time. There is what is tomorrow? Tomorrow's Thursday. I don't even know what date it is. So then you turn them this way, spray it. Tony got me all flustered. And you put these guys out on here. They're going to cook at 400 degrees for probably 12 to 15 minutes. If I had started the oven, we might have gotten to that by the time we finished here, but I don't want to put them into a non-preheated oven. So I will cook this later and get a shot up there on our Facebook page. But this was just another thing you could do with that puff pastry dough that we made the other day. We made the savory asparagus tarts. You go over to YouTube, John and Heather Perfetto on YouTube, and check out how we made that dough and see the savory appetizers we made with that. And then today I've given you a version of the sweet appetizers that we made with that, classic French palmiers. All right, here's what I have going for you here next. This is a tenderloin which is the best cut of beef, in my opinion. It runs down the back of the cow, so it doesn't get a lot of movement, and it stays very soft and tender, henceforth tenderloin. That's why they call it that. I took it out of the cryovac yesterday, so I wrapped it up pretty tightly in the fridge because I didn't want it to leak all over the place. So I'm just going to unwrap it for you and show you what we got. So this is a tenderloin. This is probably a $70 piece of meat that you bought yesterday at Restaurant Depot.
We did take a chunk off it.
I'm going to talk about that. All right, so I'm going to cut this up and put it in steaks in the freezer, and I'm going to label it because I never remember everything's in my freezer, even though I say I'm going to. All right, but I'm going to show you how to clean this thing. Normally, this is what's called the head up here, this big part, and this down here is what's called the tail. Figure out this much more. We took that off last night and we made French dips out of that. So we had onions and onion soup mix, and we made great sourdough bread, and we put some black peppercorn cheese and cooked those up because this cooks up really quickly. But I said, oh, I should show how to clean this if anybody was interested in getting a whole tenderloin. So this part back here that I'm running my fingers in this connective tissue, and that's really funny because I was just helping Jaden with this quiz and it's about gelatin and connective tissues. This is called the back strap, and I'm going to remove that. One thing that you need to process meats is really good cutlery and a steel so that it's sharp. So this is a boning knife. It's really sharp. I went to the farmer's market last summer, and there was a professional knife sharpener there, and I brought in my entire knife kit. Here, you can go over and show that.
Yeah, why don't you show real slowly what the motion is?
What this is the knife has a natural 45-degree angle. A really good chef's knife will have this natural angle pitched into it. And then when you go to sharpen it, you use that angle for how you keep your blade on the board. And I will demonstrate this another day. But this guy did such a good job sharpening it. But what happens is, as you use it and you cut on a cutting board or you cut through a bone or meat or whatever, you get these little burrs and pricks on it. So if you were to put this on a microscope, you'd see little knocks or nicks in it. So this is a steel, and what it does is it hones the knife. It just takes all those burrs off. I'm not sharpening my knife on this. My knife is sharp. I'm just bringing the edge of it up and together a little bit better. The guy that sharpened these at the farmer's market, if we get a farmer's market again this summer, we got to go to the farmer's market. So I'm going to remove this back strap here. And the key to cutting meat, if you haven't done it before and you don't know what you're doing, is to go slowly and just take little cuts at a time. And my instructor up at Culinary, when I was there years ago, he said, Mr. Peduzzi, anybody that went there and had him will remember, he said, as long as you're cutting tissue and fat, you're on the right track. So I'm going to go back and show this. I took this off to make my steaks that I'm going to make nice and even, but I'm going to go back after and show you how to trim this up for steak tips. Tenderloin tips. That's another dish that you can make. Now, the next thing we have is this beautiful tenderloin, but it has the silver skin on it. So you have to remove this silver skin because you can't bite through that. So to do that, you go right under the edge and you go one direction, and then you come back this way. So you want to take that off.
You don't take it off in one piece.
You go little bits at a time. Right. Really good guys could take it off in one piece. People who didn't pay for the meat will take it off in one piece because they don't care what they're cutting off. It's not their waste. They just want to get the job done.
It's like $10, $12 a pound. You don't want to.
So now I'm throwing
keep as much meat as you can.
Throwing this away. Well, I'm not going to throw it away. I'm going to cook it up for stock. But yeah, and if I had any suet, I'd put it out there for my woodpeckers, which I don't know where my woodpeckers live now because I just took down their tree. All right, so you go around the whole thing and you do that, and then anything that looks weird, like this wonky little piece of fat, you can remove that. You know, in a fine restaurant, you wouldn't have any of this extra stuff on it. Then there's this fat on the back that you kind of make this C-shaped cut to remove that. You could keep that on there if you want, but I just remove it because I'm going to cook all that together. And then this weird little piece in here too. But just keep that in mind. And every time I cut a tenderloin, every time I cut meat, that guy's voice is in my head. As long as you're cutting tissue and fat, you're on the right track. He was a butcher out of New York City, and he was an instructor up at the Culinary that taught meat fabrication, which was one of the weirdest classes ever up there. Okay, so there's going to be one more cut here, but first I want to talk about, if I were to cut this right here with these two pieces, which is the actual tenderloin and then this extra piece that was connected to the back of the cow, this is what's called the Chateaubriand. They sell this in fancy restaurants for a lot of money, and they sell it for, you know, parties of 2. Like this is enough meat for 4 people in my opinion, but parties of 2 would get this, what's called Chateaubriand. Now, I'm going to remove it, and I'm going to make other steaks out of it for us, just so I could show you what this tenderloin was like. But if I were doing whole sliced tenderloin in the restaurant, I wouldn't have removed that. I would have seasoned this up and just grilled it. But there's this one extra piece of connective tissue that is in between these 2 pieces of meat. So I wanted to make sure I got that off of there. I mean, I could sit here all day and trim meat and talk about trimming meat, but let's get to the heart of the matter. All right, so then the next thing to do would be to make your filet steaks. And you go ahead and decide how much you want, how big or how little you want them to be. Okay, so this is about, I'd say 6 ounces. These are probably 6 or 7 ounces. In a restaurant, it would probably be more like that, like an 8 or 12 ounce, but we're going to keep them a little bit smaller here. And I'll probably put these together in freezer wrap paper in packages of 2. And then you can bring out 2 or 4, depending upon who's going to be still here or not here. Looks like we're all going to be here for a while. We just got the notice from school for Jaden to come up and get his stuff out of his room, so they're not going back. All right, now you get this weird tail at the end. You can either add this to tenderloin tips, or you could cut the one steak, and then you could do this weird thing that's called butterflying it and turn that into a steak. That's not the most ideal steak that there is there, but someone like that here. So let's see, out of that we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 steaks. We had 4 meals last night, and then we have this piece that I'm gonna add the weird parts, and there's another piece of silver skin right there. I'm gonna add the weird parts to the steak tips that I'm gonna show you in that, but I'm gonna cut a couple of medallions off of this and pan sear those and show you a peppercorn steak dish. So this, let's see how many of these we get out of this piece. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so that's like, well, I could probably use these 2 tonight, but all right. So I'll get to that in 1 second. I'm gonna clean the back strap first. So I'm gonna put that aside. I'm gonna throw these scraps off to the side, not on that white cloth though. I'm just gonna put them there. And I'm gonna show you a little bit about trimming this up. This has a lot of garbage in it, but it also has a lot of meat that if you put in the time and energy, you know, this is a good place to practice this skill. You can harvest these little morsels out of here and make a nice little pasta dish with steak tips in it, filet tips.
That's silver skin also?
This has this that I'm removing here, yeah, that's silver skin also. But it doesn't go like, it's not like a beautiful piece of tenderloin. It's just in between all this ratty connective tissue. So you really have to trim it up, you know, and make stock out of that. And then you get these tenderloin tips. But you might have to, you know, trim a little side. It's a little bit of work. You can make tacos out of this. I've seen the guys in the restaurant, they just take this whole back strap, that's what this is called, this whole back strap part, and throw it on the grill and eat it in tacos. So, but you could see, like, you know, if you're running a business, you want to get all of your money, you want to get all the money you possibly can out of every scrap of meat. So here's a really big piece of silver skin. I'm not gonna mess around with trying to trim the fat off of that. I'm just gonna let that go into the stock pot. That's not worth it. But this piece here is worth it. This is a great piece right here. You know, I've seen guys in restaurants too just throw this away, which is infuriating, because the other thing you can do is grind this up and have an absolutely beautiful steak burger. So this piece, it's not really worth messing around with there. All right, I don't want to get too into this. I will go back and finish this after the fact. But anyway, there's steak tips. So this is gonna make another meal or lunch if we put that with pasta. So I lost count of what we got out of this. Don, you counting for me? And then, so I'm just going to show a little bit this steak meal here. I'm just going to pound these 3 just a little bit. It's so tender, it doesn't need tenderizing. I'm just doing it to get a little extra shape, and I didn't pull my pan out earlier. Yikes. Okay, so put that on there and heat that up a little bit while I wash my hands. John, entertain the crowd.
So remember, we had the steak and cheese last night, and then we've got 3, 6, 9, 10 portions right here. And then the medallions, and the tips. So for $70, I mean, that's a lot of meals. You could buy
that would be.
Yeah, I mean, you buy one of these at a restaurant, that's probably a $25 to $30 dinner.
Potato and veg, yeah.
Yeah, with potato and veg.
All right, so I'm just going to show this real quick recipe just because I happen to have this in my refrigerator here. My mom left it here. So that's a little olive oil I put into that pan. And then I'm going to put black peppercorn and the salt on both sides of my meat. You can dip this in flour. I'm not going to. I don't think it's necessary. And you need your pan to be pretty hot. And then this is some beef stock left from last night. Like I said, we made a French dip. We had some caramelized onions, and we dipped the bread in the hot stock, and then we put the sauteed little tail pieces on top of that with some melted cheese. So that's something else that you could do as well. Is there hair tongs in there? I'm just going to hit this too for a minute. All right, so the key to this is the pan has to be hot, and it's not hot, so there's no point in doing this without it being hot. My bad. Should have done that sooner. What is this called? This is called steak with peppercorn cream sauce. So I'm going to use these green peppercorns. They look like capers, but they're not. They're peppercorns. They're green. They're hard. A caper is soft. They're hard. This is something my mother left here between her cottage on the Cape and her house in Florida 5 years ago. 5 years ago. These might be 5-year-old aged. These are aged green peppercorns that we're going to use here today. And then I have a little bit of shallot and garlic, and it calls for Courvoisier and cognac and heavy cream. But I have also this little tomato cream sauce back here in this dish, left over from a pasta dish Jade made the other night. So I'm going to add that to it also, and just kind of
penny vodka sauce.
Yeah, it's like penny vodka sauce. So I'm going to add that too because I have it. It doesn't look like anybody else is eating it. All right, this is looking like it's warm enough now. So I'm going to go in, and we want to flash sear our meat. This is going to cook really quickly, and because it's so tender, it does not need to cook for a long period of time. Like if you had a strong, tougher piece of meat, you have to braise it and cook it in liquid and cook it for a longer piece of time, like short ribs or chuck meat or brisket. But filet cooks very quickly. You could eat it raw. I don't recommend that anymore. It used to be a big thing, steak tartare and carpaccio back in the day. I loved it, but I don't suggest eating that anymore like that. And we want to just let it sit in hot oil and do its thing. Once we get it browned, we're going to flip it just for like a minute on this side, because it will have some carryover cooking. And I'm going to take it out of the pan while I make the sauce. So it's probably, right now it's pretty rare, but it's going to come back into this pan with the sauce and finish cooking to medium rare, which is how people like their meat in our house. But you can cook it longer if you want it medium or medium well, or even well done. But don't buy tenderloin and turn it into well done. So right in this pan, we're going to keep the same juices, and that's going to be my shallot and garlic. It's not really shallot because I didn't have any. It's onion chopped really finely chopped onion and garlic. And then I'm going to add these peppercorns. I don't know, maybe like a tablespoon of peppercorns. So how that looks in there. And then I'm going to not set my kitchen cabinets on fire again. Courvoisier. I don't know how we ended up with 2 bottles of Courvoisier in the end. Woo! Careful if you're doing that at home. I know what I'm doing, so you gotta wear that. Then I'm gonna put this beef stock in here, right in this pan. I'm gonna juice it a little bit. Smells so good. Smells so good. And then I'm going to add this. Normally you would just add heavy cream. So I'm going to show demonstrate what it would look like regular, how it's supposed to look. And you would reduce this. You would reduce this down, and then the steak would go back in this pan. So that's what it would look like if you just used heavy cream. But since I had this tomato sauce and heavy cream, this penne vodka, I'm going to put that. So mine's going to look a little pinker than classic, whatever this peppercorn steak. This would be a great place to put some tarragon if you had it, some fresh tarragon. Okay, and when that's pretty much reduced, your steak goes back in to the pan. And here's where you would finish cooking it to the temperature you want, but don't let it boil away in here because you'll ruin a really good filet if you let it just boil in there. So, this is called a la minute cooking, where everything's made in the one pan. And then we're just going to go to a plate with our little steaks, shingle them, look like a professional chef works here, and top them with the peppercorns. And then you could do a little decoration off to the side. And then that would be like where your spinach or your potato or something went. And then you want to clean up your mess. So you could charge $25 a plate for that. And garnish with a little granary. All right, that looks delicious. So that's one thing that you could make with all of that. You can make a tenderloin tips from the back strap. These were the medallions that I made out of the Chateaubriand, or the head of the steak. And then these are the fillets that I'm going to wrap up and freeze. And I'm going to put my oven on and cook my palmiers. And that's all I have for Wednesday. What do you got, John? Anything?
Well, I just want to show you. Went out and got some eggs, and we got this little guy. Somebody's laying or about to stop laying a little tiny egg. So just so you.
If you have new chickens out there, that's considered a first egg. But I don't have any new chickens out there. Mine are all at least 1 or 2 years old. So that's probably a last egg from a bird out there. But I mean, sometimes we get them little like that, and sometimes we get them monster.
Yeah. And we get blue ones. We get an occasional blue one. So
here's a monster, and sometimes we get. But I always save the little ones and the monsters and dry them out, just because I don't know why, just because it's fun. So there's going to be a dozen eggs going out on our driveway if anybody wants to come stop by and pick up a dozen eggs curbside. And other than that, I guess we'll see you Friday. That's it.
bye.
Bye.